Hi everyone, welcome back. I'm Eric. Today I thought I would talk about some of the Criterion discs that I own and just kind of go through. I don't have a huge collection, just go through some of the physical media from Criterion that I have. If you're not familiar, you probably are, but if you're not, Criterion puts out classic movies on physical media. I think in the past they were more known for more art house movies, but it seems like in recent years they've gone to more mainstream movies. So they do have a variety of films that come out. Of course, there's a Criterion channel, which is a streaming channel, which is really good, which you can have access to a lot of global cinema. You get, if you can access Criterion, you can really get a really good education on the history of cinema itself. So that channel is really good. Another thing I like about the Criterion channel is that they include extras with the movies, which you typically don't get with some of the other streaming services. So I would highly recommend, if you want to expand your movie horizon, to think about the Criterion channel. And they don't use an algorithm either, which is nice, which most of the others do. But anyway, I just go through some movies I picked out and talk about some that I have in my collection. I guess I'll start out with, I should talk about the Criterion discs. Usually come with a booklet with the disc, which has some essays, maybe some interviews with people involved with the production, maybe some photos from the production. But you get a lot of reading material with the movie, and that includes a lot of extras that are on the disc itself, whether it's commentary tracks or interviews with people with the production, or film essays from film scholars, film historians, film critics. So I guess that's the big advantage of Criterion, where you kind of get the more fuller experience of a film, not just the film itself, which has always been nice. These discs, typically are a little more on the expensive side, but they do have sales throughout the year, 50% off sales that you can buy these discs. So whenever I had some extra income around, I would always try to pick up a Criterion. You could get good deals sometimes, but normally they are. And physical media is getting more and more expensive. The market, I know, is getting more and more niche. Shipping costs have gone way up in the past several years. So and there's a lot of other boutique labels besides Criterion who put out really good things, but they're just so expensive. Though it's hard to keep up with all the releases. So me anyway, you kind of have to be selective of what you buy. And when it comes to physical media, I like to own movies that I generally like, movies that if I have them, I can put them on anytime I want. I don't want to own everything in physical media. I don't want some gigantic closet of physical media. I don't want a huge collection. Just I try to go for more of a selective one that's, is, not, so you're filling up rooms and everything. So anyway, I'll just go through some of these discs and talk about the movies a little bit, and and just go through these. So I'll start out with Barry Lyndon. This is directed by Stanley Kubrick. This film was released in 1975. It stars Ryan O'Neal. This film is it's a period piece. It's set in the late 18th century. It's based on a novel by William Thackeray, which I've not read the book. I do have that book, but I've never read it. And it's a 3-hour movie, but we follow this character. He's an Irishman who is kind of exiled from his hometown, and he has to go into Europe you have conflicts going on in Europe, and he gets tied up with these wars with the military for a while. Eventually, he falls into more, I guess, higher class circles in Europe and gets involved with gambling and other types of endeavors. So it's kind of a rise and fall type of story. This might not be one of the big go-tos for Stanley Kubrick because it's a period piece, but it's whenever I watch it, it's just a incredible film with the production value is impressive. The way the landscapes are shot are impressive. They look like paintings very much, but the period detail. Famously, this film used candlelight. They were able to develop lenses that could shoot in candlelight, so you have this really almost very natural lighting throughout the film, but it's really good. It's kind of episodic in some ways, but yeah, it's like I said, it's probably not one that people go to a lot for Kubrick. You know, they might go to the Clockwork Orange or 2001 or The Shining, more popular films, but Barry Lyndon is really good if you ever get a chance to watch it. And there's a lot of good extras. A lot of people with production gave interviews, and yeah, so Barry Lyndon. Next disc here is My Dinner with Andre. This film was released in 1983, directed by Louis Malle. The film stars Wallace Shawn and Andre Gregory. And this film is simply about two old friends who meet for dinner. They're both playwrights in New York City. Andre is he's been traveling for years, and he's developed some interesting theories about reality. And Wallace Shawn plays Wally, or yeah, playing himself basically, or a version of himself, who's like a little more grounded, a little bit more, who kind of not questions Andre, but they have these interesting exchanges about reality, and it turns into about how people live today, and it gets philosophical. I like this film. I always find it deeply. It's funny. It's moving. I know the criticism of this film is just two guys talking on a table. What's exciting about that? And you're right. But I would say give it a chance. I always really enjoy this one, My Dinner with Andre. Yes. I should mention as well, the comedian Andy Kaufman did a parody of this film called My Dinner with Blassie, Fred Blassie, who was a professional wrestler. I believe that's on YouTube. And if you watch My Dinner with Andre and then watch the Andy Kaufman parody, it's one of the funniest things I've ever seen. But that's my sense of humor. So yeah. Anyway, let's see. Next up, I got a couple of films from Akira Kurosawa, who's one of my all-time favorite directors. I've been watching a lot of his films lately, so I have a few here. So this is High and Low. This was released in 1963. This is a crime thriller. It's about a kidnapping, a high-level executive for a company. The film is set in Tokyo. The city of Tokyo really becomes a character in this film. And there's a kidnapping of a child, and the police get involved, and it becomes this story about institutions, about class, about how systems work, about the tensions of big city life. So this simple kidnapping story, and you have so many heavy themes put into the story. Kurosawa's framing is incredible. There's a outstanding action sequence on a train. Yeah, you gotta love a sequence on a train. Just the sound design, the cinematography, really incredible film. Really influential film, I think, on like Michael Mann. If you're a fan of movies like Heat or Manhunter, David Fincher as well. So you can see this influence where Kurosawa really taking a crime film and expanding the canvas so much. So high on those great stars, Toshiro Mifune, but a lot of, if you watch Kurosawa movies, he used a lot of the same actors in his movies, so this was good. This is kind of a bit of a late Kurosawa. This came out in '63, so this is kind of, or middle period, I guess would be the best way to describe it. Another earlier Kurosawa film is another heavy hitter, Ikiru, which came, I believe that's translated to live is the translation for that. This is a story about a man who learns he has 6 months to live, and it's about what he does with those last 6 months of his life. He's been a bureaucrat his entire life. He's had this job that's kind of boring. He kind of has regrets about his life, and he's dealing with all that, dealing with his mortality, and it really becomes quite a moving story. One of the greatest films ever made about what it means to live a life and what kind of life we should live. It raises great questions about that, but just a fantastic film. Takashi Shimura plays the main character, who once again was a Kurosawa regular. He was in The Seven Samurai. He was in many Kurosawa films, but this would almost be a movie. If I would say where to start with Kurosawa, I would say Ikiru would be a place to start. So yeah, moving on here. So this is a film, My Winnipeg, Guy Madden, Canadian filmmaker. This is kind of an autobiographical film about his hometown. It's done in this really experimental style. It's kind of hard to describe. It's like you're watching some old film that somebody found in some attic, that's been sitting there for 30 years. And there's narration, and there's a lot of different techniques being used, documentary techniques, cinema techniques. I think I've only watched this one once, but it's a really eccentric film, and just a really interesting. 2007 this one came out. So My Winnipeg. Moving on next here, this is Shadows, which was John Cassavetes written and directed. This is an important film for American independent cinema, where this was made outside of Hollywood. Cassavetes was a New York City filmmaker, brought a whole different aesthetic to filmmaking, influenced a lot by Italian neorealism, kind of a documentary quality, but also dealing with some issues that Hollywood would not deal with as much. This film, it deals partly with an interracial relationship. This is in the late 1950s, but it really makes makes the city a character. There's a lot of jazz music in the film, so it's just a really stylistic and a really important film for independent movies. So that's a Cassavetes film. See, the next two here are kind of more Hollywood movies. It's a Mad World. This was a huge comedy that came out with, this is 63, yeah. So this movie is about almost 3 hours long, and it has a gigantic cast of stars, cameos from old Hollywood people. The Three Stooges appear in this film. Just everybody seems to make an appearance here. It's just this kind of wacky madcap comedy about a treasure, and all these people are trying to search for this treasure, and it's really about kind of the mania of post-war culture. So a lot of different styles of comedy in this film. So I can't say it's my favorite comedy of all time, but it's always an interesting watch because it's done on such a big scale. Stanley Kramer directed this, who's more known for making more serious films like Judgment at Nuremberg or On the Beach, movies like that. But this is kind of just a real crazy comedy from the 60s. And I think this was from the same year. The Great Escape I would say this is like the dad movie of dad movies. This is, if you grew up in the 80s and 90s, chances are, if this movie was on TV, your dad was probably watching it. 70s, 80s, 90s. It's set at a prisoner of war camp in Germany during World War II. You have an international cast, Steve McQueen in the lead, but many people like James Garner and Richard Attenborough, and just a huge cast of Charles Bronson's in this, of actors from that time, and it's just a great. It's kind of like it's like a blockbuster movie. It's just very entertaining. It's the Allies against the Germans. There's a lot of humor in it. There's some pathos. There's some stunning action sequences, and it's also a movie about getting the team together and everybody kind of working together to try to escape from this camp, and it becomes one of those movies as well. And I like where it's not just about the escape either, it's about the aftermath of the escape. So John Sturges directed this, and just classic movies. The music score is a classic as well. So yeah, The Great Escape, which Criterion put out, and yeah, always a favorite. Let's see next. Let's see a couple from the 80s right here. Scanners. I think I've reviewed this film on an earlier video, but David Cronenberg Scanners. This is one of my favorite Cronenberg films. I think it's one of his best films. The plot is about people with psychic powers and sort of new genetic mutations happening. So it's this the telekinesis was very much in a lot of movies were dealing with that in the 70s and 80s, and Scanners is really good. Something about the look of these earlier Cronenberg films, something about Canada and the way the architecture he captures, and the gray blue sheen, and it just has this clinical quality to it, almost this I don't know, it's hard to describe, but clinical would be one way I would describe it, but aesthetically fascinating and unique. And there's famously some great special effects in this movie, but it's also very violent, and it's a very dark film as well. But my respect for Scanners continues to grow through the years. Next one is Repo Man. I think I've talked about this one in an earlier video too. This is Alex Cox. This is kind of a punk rock sci-fi film from 1984. It's got Emilio Estevez and Harry Dean Stanton, and it's set in Los Angeles in the 80s, and it's really about how people in the underclass were living in the city in the middle of the Reagan era. There's a lot of social commentary on capitalism, conspiracy theories, a lot of punk rock culture. So it's just I know people love this movie. It is a really good film, and it's very funny at times, and it's a film where it's always surprising you. But yeah, Repo Man, very good. Let's see, just a few more here. This is If is the title of this film. Malcolm McDowell. This was part of the first of a trilogy of movies called the Mick Travis trilogy, and this was the first. This one's set at an English boarding school, public school, and it's very much of the late 60s. It's about rebellion. It's about kind of like how young people felt so restrained and smothered by the establishment, by all the rules of society. So it goes into some absurd directions, which I like about it. Some of the movies in color, some's in black and white, so that it's sort of switching back and forth. This was directed by Lindsay Anderson, who's I like his movies. His movies are really good. Early Malcolm McDowell performance. I think this was his first starring role. very memorable in this film, and I think still a film that's quite challenging. I think even over 50 years later, still has a lot of power to it. This film, so yeah, If is very good. And let's see, moving on, I have recent film, The Irishman. It's Martin Scorsese's film from 2019. This is a very long film, an epic film, allegedly based on a true story. I don't know how true it is, where it's about De Niro plays this character who was, I guess, an enforcer for the crime world, and it was in the middle of a lot of power plays, a lot of key events in American history. He was close to Jimmy Hoffa, had ties to the criminal underworld. So I guess this is like kind of an epilogue film with Scorsese's cycle of crime films. I guess you could go back to Mean Streets and Goodfellas and Casino. Wolf of Wall Street you might throw in there. Gangs of New York you might throw in there too, as are seemingly now all part of a cycle of films. But this is such a melancholy film. It's really about, ultimately it's about aging. It's about coming to terms with what you've done with your life. Pretty extreme case here with what the De Niro character was involved in. Al Pacino's in this. Joe Pesci, who rarely acts. I think he came out of retirement to act in this film. So yeah, I like The Irishman. I've only watched it a few times, but I think if you watch it thinking of it as kind of an epilogue to Scorsese's crime films throughout the years, this one works very much in that way. So, last one I'll talk about in this pile, Wise Blood. This was an adaptation of the Flannery O'Connor novel. This was directed by John Huston. Starred Brad Dourif. I like Flannery O'Connor. I like her writing. I think she was really interesting. Remember, I taught some of her stories many years ago, and I remember reading her letters, which were really interesting too. Just almost more interesting than her fiction, than reading just her correspondence with people. But her fiction was so good. This was her first novel, Wise Blood, and it deals with religion. It deals with fraud. It's about the South, Southern culture. So it's dealing with a lot of heady themes. There's a lot of social commentary in it, and it becomes what seems to be kind of like this, I don't know, satire, farcical comedy, and then it gets really serious towards the end. So I like movies that do that kind of have a tonal shift, you know. You think it's going one direction, then it goes in a completely different direction. So Harry Dean Stanton's also in this as well. I think he plays a supposedly blind preacher. Ned Beatty is in this. Yeah, a lot of notable character actors from this time. So yeah, Wise Blood. I like that one. So yeah, I have a few more I'll talk about. Come back, do some more of these. If you have any thoughts, any questions on any of these films, please do let me know. But thanks for watching, and I will talk to you later. Have a good one.